guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another Elestrals deck profile. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a brand new camera. Very awesome stuff. It's a camera that you guys can actually, see things. So you can actually read the effects and see the cards a little bit better. From what I'm seeing, it's still not perfect. I'm still trying to test out a lot of stuff, but it does seem a lot better than what we were using previously. So I think this is a very good thing to do. So without further ado, let's get into Fruits. So Fruit is currently my favorite Earth deck in the game. I much prefer playing Fruit over Earth Beatdown. I think it's just a more fun strategy. And arguably a little bit better. Probably not. You probably wouldn't argue that's a little bit better, but it definitely has a lot of potential, in my opinion. And it's a very, very fun deck nonetheless. The deck utilizes the card in front of you, Ledagon, and another card that you're going to see a little bit later, Drataya, to just get an immense draw engine, and then get a big guy out that can pop anything in the field. And it's the best deck at using Ambrosia, as you guys are about to see. So, without further ado, let's get straight on into the deck profile. So, with the Elestrals, start things off, we are playing 2 copies of Ledagon. Ledagon is a very, very good card at 2. You can technically play 3 copies of this card if you want to, but I think 2 is a sweet spot. It just says 7/8. Well, when a player casts Ambrosia or Golden Apple of Discord, target and destroy a card. Very, very powerful effect. We are also playing 3 copies of Drataya. Drataya says when a player casts Ambrosia, draw 2. This is immensely good and just does a whole hell of a lot. You can activate this card multiple times in a single turn, and you can get multiple draws. My record currently, I think, is 10 cards drawn, which is very low for what this deck can actually really accomplish. I've heard somebody drew like 26 cards at one point. Insane, absolutely insane. It's crazy. We are also playing 3 copies of Rummagem. This card can just search any one-cost Earth Elestral, which is, for the most part, the majority of our deck. The only cards that I can't search are Ledagon. The only Earth cards that we're playing in this deck that I can't search are Ledagon, I should say. So it's very, very powerful for that specific effect. We're also playing 3 copies of Pandasin. Pandasin is actually very, very powerful in this deck. The ability to just get an additional... for anyone who doesn't know, this card says, disenchant 1 from this Pandasin, return an invoke rune from your underworld to your hand. This card just basically reads, play an additional 3 copies of Ambrosia. Because this card on cast, you just disenchant it, grab an Ambrosia, and then you can get your draw engine going even further. So Pandasin is very, very powerful in this deck. Next up, we are also playing 3 copies of Viscerus. We need something just in case the draw engine doesn't end up working. Viscerus is a good Earth Beatdown card to just get our plays just skyrocketing. And then one of our 3 copies of Astrabbit to get additional consistency in. So that's it for the Elestrals. Let's get into the runes, because the runes is where this deck really shines. So to start things off, we are playing 3 copies of Ambrosia. Ambrosia, obviously, very important to this deck in particular, because it gets us our draw engine, but it's also just a very powerful card overall. Just return any 3 spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck. Very, very powerful card to heal up, and also get your draw engine going. If you have a Ledagon, pop a card as well. We are also playing the newly released Ambrosia Cornucopia. So we're playing 6 total copies of Ambrosia. Cornucopia allows you to draw 1 and then return any number of spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck up to the number of Ambrosia in your underworld. So the more amount of Ambrosias that you cast, the more you get to heal with Cornucopia. And it's only 2 Earth, very, very powerful effect. Next up, we are playing 2 copies of Rise from the Ashes. This is actually a very, very powerful card in this deck. Not only does this allow us to potentially resurrect a Drataya that our opponent has potentially dealt with, so we can get our draw engine going even further. If we already have a Drataya, we can rise out a Pandasin, and then Pandasin can grab back an Ambrosia, and we can get our draw engine going that way as well. So Rise is actually a very, very powerful card for that exact reason. Next up, a bit of an interesting card, 2 copies of Blizzard. I'm probably going to change this card out for Thunderstorm. However, in Daybreak, I want to test it out. I want to test Blizzard out at the very least. Because I think this deck very much struggles against cards like Gorgon's Gaze or Dense Fog. And the fact that... so Blizzard's just a very, very good way to potentially stop our opponents from activating those on our Jataya to prevent our draw engine from going. That's what this deck really struggles with. The reason why I'm tempted to drop this from Blizzard to a Thunderstorm is that Blizzard can only target face down runes. Thunderstorm can target any rune. The difference, though, is that Blizzard's cast cannot be chained by counter runes. I was thinking, oh, that could potentially be actually very, very useful. In reality, it isn't. For the most part, you're just using this card to pop a set Gorgon's Gaze, pop a set Dense Fog, and if you activate it before you cast your guy, then they can't just negate it anyway. They can't suppress it, is what I'm trying to say. While if we're playing Thunderstorm can then target any rune. So if our opponent has a Stadium or a Divine rune up, we can pop that as well. So I think Thunderstorm is the better card actually in this position. I'm probably going to swap that out after I'm done recording this video. So actually make this 2 copies of Thunderstorm rather than 2 copies of Blizzard. Next up, we are just going to be playing just the usual stuff. For Earth, we're obviously playing 3 Earthquake, and then for the counter runes, 3 Tsunami, 3 Shield of Achilles, 2 Gorgon's Gaze, and 2 Poison Tipped Arrow. I will say, I think the Gorgon's Gaze should be at 3. I would drop a shield for Gorgons. You could also technically drop a Viscerus or a Astrabbit if you'd rather. But I definitely think you should be playing 3 Gorgon's Gaze rather than 2. So definitely up this ratio of Gorgon's Gazes. But that's it for the runes. Let's get into the Spirit deck. The Spirit deck is a little bit interesting. Obviously, with the Thunderstorm potentially coming in, this would be a little bit different, but we're going to be playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 copies of Terratlas. I'll explain why we're playing 12 in just a second. I just want to quickly get into the additional cards that we are actually going to be playing. So there's 12 Terratlas. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 copies of Flormine. We also have 2 copies of Leviathan and 2 copies of Zaptor. So, what exactly am I attempting to do with these ratios? Well, the Zaptors and the Leviathans are pretty self-explanatory, in my opinion. They are pretty self-explanatory. You're basically just playing the 2 Zaptors for the Astrabbits and the 2 Leviathans for the Tsunamis. That's completely standard. And then the 4 Flormine, though, might be a little weird because we are only playing 2 copies of Blizzard, so why are we playing 4 Flormine rather than 2? The reasoning behind that is that there are a lot of times you actually really would like to activate that second copy of Blizzard. So that does come up at times, which is why I felt like including 4 copies of Flormine is the correct answer. If I were to drop the Flormines for Thunderstorms, if I were to drop the Blizzards for Thunderstorms, I would drop obviously every single copy of Flormine, and I think I would play an additional 3 copies of Zaptor. So my ratio would be actually 13 Terratlas, 5 Zaptor, 2 Leviathan. I think that is what I would actually do if I do tech in the Thunderstorms as well. So just keep that one in mind as I place out all the additional cards. There you go. That's the entire Spirit deck and what we're running. So I think this deck is really cool. This deck obviously can do it can do a lot. And if you're able to just absolutely go off, you can get a ton of draws in a given turn. Crazy stuff. So this deck, very fun, very good in my opinion. I thought it was actually going to be the premier Earth deck of Frostfall, and I turned out to be wrong. It has yet to even top. Earth Beatdown has already gotten a bunch of tops. Now, a couple of tech cards I guess I could also talk about. You could, if you want, play Moss Station. And the reason I'm not playing Moss Station, honestly, I just don't really think it's that amazing of a card. It's good to just like go in, get a big hit in, and just call it a day there. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of that, though, is because I just feel like it's better to play additional consistency tools rather than a big beater. In a deck that can already basically search through its entire deck, your win con in this deck is stalling a bunch of time, and then eventually going in for a big push with like Ladylon or Viscerus, so that your opponent just basically has nothing. That is sort of the game plan with this deck, or at least the way I play it, so I don't really think Moss Station is necessary in a deck like this. You very easily, if you want, tech it in, It's your deck. Do whatever you want. The other card that I feel like you could potentially add in is Equalinks. And the reason I'm not playing Equalinks is because I'm not playing Demeter. But if you do play Demeter, definitely I think Equalinks is a very, very good card to tech in, and you probably should. The reason I'm not playing Demeter is because it takes up a lot of deck space. This deck really, really wants to. This deck has a very tight main deck. You got to be playing basically all of the Elestrals that I showed you. You could, I guess, technically speaking, drop the Astrapets, and you could technically also drop Pandasin, if you want, and then you could play your Equalinkses and your Demeters. But the issue I have with that personally is that I feel like that is more so going into Earth Beatdown with a Fruit Engine, just to get a bunch of draws in. Whereas normal Earth Beatdown just basically goes off. It has a ton of damage output, and can just hit your opponent for 1,000,000. Whereas the way I personally like playing Fruit is actually just like playing very passively, going for that draw engine, and going off from there. If you want, you can play a little bit of Earth Beatdown here. You can play the Equalinkses, you can play the Moss Stations, you can even play Tech Taurus and maybe even Full Life Forest if you'd rather. I personally don't want to do that just because I feel like it's a lot more fun to just get the draw engine going and not really have to worry about anything else. I like playing Fruit as a control deck. I don't really like playing it as an aggro deck. So that's my reasoning for not playing those particular cards. That being said, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Really hope you enjoyed. And again, if you haven't picked Fruit up, if you haven't tried this deck out, I do very much recommend that you do so. This is a very fun deck to, at the very least, try out. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you do like it, definitely roll with it. It's a very fun deck. I will say one thing as well. I am recording this around when Daybreak is releasing. The reason why I didn't choose to wait until Daybreak released is because I don't really think there's a whole lot that I would change with this deck when Daybreak releases. The only potential card that I might add into this deck is Barabid. Because Barabid, for anyone who does not know, if you cast an Invoke rune using Earth, your opponent is forced to expend 1. And you can activate that 4 times in a given turn. If you pair that with a Chitaya, you get you can essentially get a draw 8 plus burn your opponent for 4, which is not bad. The only issue with it is that it does require you to keep one of those Elestrals alive for a given turn, unless you rise from the ashes one of them back. And another issue, I don't really know what I would drop for it. I'm thinking the Blizzards. And I'm also maybe thinking of 1 Earthquake, maybe drop some counter runes as well. I feel like this deck does struggle though without a bunch of counter runes, so you really do want to interrupt your opponent in a lot of different ways. But that's sort of like the only potential change I would make to this deck. But that being said, that's going to do it for this video, guys. So I hope you enjoy it. If you did, make sure to slap the like button and subscribe for more. Hope to see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.